For 90 years, Craftsman was the tool brand America trusted most. Then in 2017, Sears sold it for $900 million. Not as a manufacturer, but as a logo. The factories were already gone. The domestic suppliers were cut loose. The lifetime warranty was quietly hollowed out. Yet 4 American tool makers, some even older than Craftsman, exposed the lie that offshoring was the only way to survive. The promise. Behind the Craftsman name was more than marketing. When Sears introduced the brand in 1927, the company offered a lifetime warranty, an audacious pledge that any broken tool would be replaced, no questions asked. This guarantee, printed in the earliest catalogs and repeated in hardware aisles across the country, became a quiet contract between factory, store, and household. Craftsman didn't forge its own tools. It built a network of American suppliers. Moore Drop Forging, Isco, Vaughan, and Bushnell, each chosen for their ability to meet standards that matched the weight of that lifetime promise. The Craftsman badge on a wrench or hammer meant it had passed through the hands of workers in Illinois, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, men and women who understood that their work would be tested not just by customers, but by time itself. For generations, this approach turned Craftsman into a symbol of reliability, a fixture in both professional toolboxes and kitchen drawers. The brand's value was anchored in the reality of domestic production and the trust that comes when a company stands behind what it sells year after year with no expiration date. By the early 1990s, the Craftsman name still carried the weight of its legacy, but the reality behind each tool was changing. Internal warranty logs from Sears reveal a sharp rise in returns. Claims tripled between 1990 and 2000, creating a surge that overwhelmed service counters and strained the promise of a lifetime guarantee. In 1994, a senior Sears executive admitted on a public conference call that most Craftsman tools were now made overseas. That single statement, buried in the business pages, signaled a break in the chain of trust that had anchored the brand for generations. Customers who once expected a wrench forged in Illinois or a hammer from Pennsylvania now found labels that read China or Taiwan. The cost-cutting logic behind these moves was clear: cheaper labor and higher margins. But the hidden cost was measured in broken sockets, stripped screwdrivers, and frustrated returns. By the time Sears sold Craftsman to Stanley Black & Decker in 2017 for $900 million, the brand's manufacturing identity had been hollowed out. Warranty claims kept climbing, and the promise that once set Craftsman apart now rang hollow for many who had grown up relying on it. The brand survived in name, but the bond between maker and user had been quietly severed. In 1857, Matthias Klein opened a blacksmith shop on Chicago's South Side, repairing pliers for telegraph linemen. That single act, reshaping a tool for a tradesman, set the course for what would become Klein Tools. 6 generations later, the Klein family still owns and runs the company, a rarity in American manufacturing. While competitors consolidated, merged, or offshored, Klein expanded its U.S. footprint. Today, the company operates 6 domestic plants, producing more than 5,000 different hand tool SKUs. Its catalog stretches from classic pliers to advanced insulated gear, with a special focus on the needs of electricians. In fact, within the trades, Klein is shorthand for the pliers themselves, a nickname earned over decades of reliability on job sites and utility poles. Klein's commitment to domestic production is not just a slogan. The company has repeatedly declined overseas manufacturing bids, instead investing in plant upgrades and workforce development. Apprenticeship programs, some running since the 1970s, ensure that technical skills stay within the company and the communities around each factory. This approach has paid off. Klein's annual sales approach $1 billion, with tools exported to more than 60 countries. The company's growth shows that scale and continuity are possible without breaking ties to local labor or family governance. In a landscape littered with brands that traded tradition for cost savings, Klein stands as proof that stewardship and scale can coexist, and that a toolmaker's identity survives when it stays rooted in the hands that built it. In 1886, George DeArmond opened a blacksmith shop in Meadville, Pennsylvania, laying the groundwork for what would become Channelock. The real turning point arrived in 1933 with the patent for the tongue-and-groove slip-joint plier, a tool that could grip pipes, bolts, and fittings with a simple adjustment. That single patent, U.S. Patent 1,880,234, did more than shape a product line. It created a moat around the company. Royalties from the design poured back into the Meadville plant, funding new forging lines and keeping every stage of production under one roof. While competitors eyed cheaper labor abroad, Channelock doubled down on domestic manufacturing. The plant became both a workplace and a proving ground, where every plier was tested by the same hands that built it. The DeArmond family, now in its fifth generation of leadership, has never licensed the core plier design to foreign factories. Instead, they reinvested in steel, equipment, and training, ensuring that every tool stamped with the Channelock name is still made in Pennsylvania. Today, the company exports to more than 60 countries, yet remains rooted in Meadville, where over 350 employees produce millions of pliers each year. Channelock's survival is not just a story of innovation, but of discipline, using intellectual property to fund real jobs and keep the promise of American-made quality alive, even as others chased margins overseas. In 1923, Ernest Estwing set up his forge in Rockford, Illinois, intent on solving a problem that had plagued carpenters and masons for generations: the hammer's weak point, where wood met steel. Most striking tools failed at the joint, splitting under stress or loosening with use. Estwing's answer was radical for its time: a hammer forged from a single piece of solid steel, head to handle. The process, later protected by U.S. Patent 2,168,153, required precise control over temperature and metallurgy, and the result was a tool that simply didn't break. This wasn't just a marketing claim. During World War II, when steel was rationed and most tool companies faced shortages or shutdowns, Estwing received a rare exemption from the War Production Board. The government's files list Estwing as a critical supplier, its one-piece hammers deemed essential for military engineers and construction crews. Production never stopped. Decades later, Estwing's centennial in 2023 drew attention from collectors and curators alike. The Smithsonian Institution added an original Estwing hammer to its collection, citing the design's impact on American industry. Through wars, recessions, and waves of offshoring, the Rockford plant continued to turn out hammers using the same one-piece forging method. The Estwing name, stamped into every handle, stands as proof that process mastery and design control can anchor a company's identity across a full century, long after so many competitors traded their factories for contracts and their legacy for a label. Vaughan and Bushnell's story stretches back to 1869, when a young blacksmith named Alexander Vaughn rebuilt his shop after the Great Chicago Fire wiped out much of the city. That act of survival set the tone for a company that would come to define American striking tools. In the heart of Hebron, Illinois, the Vaughn plant runs 5 days a week, forging out 10,000 hammers, pieces, and pry bars every single workday. This is not a boutique operation. Production logs confirm a weekly output that routinely tops 80,000 tools, with a product catalog that spans more than 250 distinct designs. Every tool begins as a billet of American steel, shaped and tempered by workers whose families have often spent generations at the same plant. Unlike so many competitors, Vaughn never chased offshore savings. The company negotiated higher wages with its local workforce, invested in new forging lines, and doubled down on process automation. Without ever moving a single hammer mold to Asia, that decision did not just preserve jobs. It allowed Vaughn to build the world's largest hammer-making operation while maintaining tight control over quality. As an original equipment manufacturer, Vaughn supplied Sears with Craftsman branded hammers for decades, a partnership rooted in mutual standards of durability and trust. Even as Craftsman shifted its sourcing overseas, Vaughn's output never left Hebron. Plant managers point to daily output logs and a wall of original equipment. Manufacturer contracts as proof. High-volume American-made manufacturing is not a relic. It is alive and swinging every day on the factory floor. Today, the label on a tool tells more than price. It reveals whether a company stands with its makers or its shareholders. As brand names multiply but true manufacturers dwindle, every purchase becomes a vote. The survival of craft now depends on what and who we choose to trust.